Imagine being stripped naked, force-fed milk and honey until you're violently sick, then strapped between two boats with only your head, hands, and feet exposed. Now imagine being left to float on a stagnant pond, while insects, attracted by the honey smeared across your face, begin to lay eggs in your eyes, nose, and mouth. This isn't fiction. This isn't a horror movie. This was real. This was Scaphism, the most prolonged, most psychologically devastating torture ever devised by human minds. And today, I'm going to tell you the story of one man who endured it and somehow lived to tell the tale. But before I take you into the darkest corners of ancient Persia, hit that like button if you're brave enough to hear this story to the end. Subscribe if you want more historical horrors that will haunt your dreams. And buckle up, because this journey into human depravity is going to test every limit you thought you had. His name was Mithridates, not the famous king, but a Persian soldier whose only crime was falling in love with the wrong woman. A woman promised to his commanding officer. A woman whose beauty had started a war within a war. Picture him now, 26 years old, broad shoulders scarred from countless battles, hands that had held both sword and scroll. For Mithridates was no common soldier. He was educated, articulate, a man who could quote poetry as easily as he could command troops. His dark eyes held intelligence and humor, the kind of man who made others feel comfortable in his presence. But on this scorching day in 401 BCE, those same eyes were wide with terror. "I should have stayed in Babylon," he whispers to himself as the guards drag him toward the execution ground. "I should have never looked at her, never have spoken to her, never have dared to love her." But even now, facing the most horrific death imaginable, he cannot regret loving Roxana. Her laugh like silver bells, her touch like cool water in the desert, her intelligence that matched his own. How could he regret the 3 months of stolen happiness they had shared? The irony burns more than the Persian sun beating down on his naked back. Mithridates had survived the Battle of Cunaxa. He had faced Greek hoplites and lived. He had charged into the bristling forest of their spears and emerged victorious. But love had destroyed him more completely than any enemy army ever could. Transport yourself to the heart of the Persian Empire, 401 BCE. The greatest empire the world has ever known stretches from the Indus River to the Mediterranean Sea. Persepolis rises like a jeweled crown from the desert, its massive columns supporting a sky painted gold by the setting sun. This is the world of Artaxerxes II, where absolute power corrupts absolutely, where the king's word is law and his whim is death, where justice is whatever serves the empire, and mercy is a luxury reserved for those who never truly oppose the crown. But this story doesn't unfold in the glory of Persepolis. No, our tale takes place in a military camp outside Babylon, where the air shimmers with heat and ambition, where 10,000 soldiers dream of glory and gold, unaware that their dreams will soon turn to nightmares. General Tissaphernes, say the name and watch Persian soldiers stiffen with fear, a man whose cruelty is legendary even in an empire built on conquest. Tall, elegant, with a beard perfumed with oils from distant lands, and eyes like chips of obsidian. He speaks softly, which somehow makes his words more terrifying than any roar. He had wanted Roxana for himself, not out of love. Tissaphernes was incapable of love, out of possession, out of the desire to own something beautiful and break it slowly, like a child pulling wings from a butterfly. It happened at dawn, 3 days ago. Mithridates had been delivering dispatches when he heard her scream. Without thinking, he had burst into Tissaphernes' tent to find the general forcing himself on Roxana, her beautiful face streaked with tears, her silk gown torn. The next moments were a blur of violence. Mithridates' dagger finding its way into his hand, Tissaphernes stumbling backward, a thin line of blood appearing across his throat where the blade had kissed his skin. Roxana fleeing into the morning mist like a ghost seeking sanctuary. "You dare raise a weapon against your superior?" Tissaphernes had whispered, his fingers exploring the shallow cut on his neck. "You dare interfere with my recreation?" "I dare protect an innocent woman from a monster," Mithridates had replied, knowing even as he spoke that he was signing his own death warrant. Tissaphernes had smiled then, an expression more terrifying than any snarl of rage. "Scaphism," he had said softly, "I sentence you to the boats. May it take you 17 days to die, as it did the last man who dared to defy me." Let me explain to you exactly what Scaphism entails, because understanding the method is crucial to understanding the madness. The Persians didn't just execute people, they turned death into an art form, a performance piece designed to break not just the body, but the very soul. First, the condemned is stripped naked and force-fed milk and honey until they vomit. This isn't mercy, it's preparation. The mixture creates violent diarrhea, and the honey, smeared across the victim's face and genitals, attracts every insect for miles around. Then comes the boats, two shallow vessels, often made of wood, sometimes carved from single logs. The victim is strapped between them, trapped like a sandwich, with only head, hands, and feet exposed to the elements. But here's what makes Scaphism uniquely terrifying. It's not the immediate pain that breaks a person. It's the waiting. It's lying there, unable to move, covered in your own waste, feeling the first tentative explorations of flies landing on your face. It's knowing that this is only the beginning. The boats are then set adrift on a stagnant pond. The victim is fed daily, enough to keep them alive, never enough to end their suffering quickly. And day by day, as infection sets in, as insects lay their eggs in every orifice, as gangrene slowly consumes the extremities, the victim descends into a madness that makes death seem like the sweetest mercy. Mithridates feels the rough wood against his back, the cruel tightness of the ropes around his wrists and ankles. The honey is already drying on his skin, forming a sticky, sweet coating that makes his flesh crawl even before the insects arrive. The sun is merciless. Persian summers are not kind to the exposed, and the reflection off the water doubles its intensity. Within an hour, his lips are cracking. Within 2, he's hallucinating from the heat. "Roxana," he whispers to the blazing sky. "Where are you now? Are you safe? Did you escape?" His mind begins to wander, seeking escape from present horror in memories of past joy. He remembers their first meeting. She had been drawing water from a well, her dark hair catching the morning light like black silk shot through with gold. He had offered to help, and she had laughed. "Do I look helpless to you?" she had asked, and he had fallen in love with that laugh, with the intelligence in her dark eyes, with the strength in her slender arms as she hauled up the heavy bucket without his assistance. They had talked for hours that day, about poetry and philosophy, about the nature of justice and the price of freedom. She was well educated, the daughter of a Persian nobleman who had encouraged her learning despite the conventions of their society. But even memory cannot shield him from reality for long. The first flies arrive as the sun reaches its zenith, tentative at first, just landing and taking off, testing the sweetness of his honey-smeared skin, then more bold, crawling across his closed eyelids, exploring his nostrils, his mouth. He tries to shake his head, but the movement is limited by the boat's constraints. He blows air through his nose, tries to spit, but it only attracts more insects. They seem to multiply by the minute. Flies, gnats, beetles, even wasps drawn by the sweet scent. Dawn brings no relief, only the realization that yesterday was just the prologue. Mithridates' skin is already showing signs of infection where insect bites have become tiny, festering wounds. The honey has fermented in the heat, creating a foul-smelling paste that attracts even more creatures. But worse than the physical discomfort is the psychological torture. He can hear Tissaphernes on the shore, giving orders to his men, living his life as if Mithridates doesn't exist, as if his suffering is just background noise to the business of war. "How does it feel, my brave soldier?" Tissaphernes calls out across the water. "Are you beginning to understand the price of defiance?" Mithridates finds his voice, though it comes out as barely a croak. "Where is she? Where is Roxana?" Tissaphernes' laughter echoes across the water like the cry of a hunting bird. "Safe in my tent, learning to be more grateful for my attention. Don't worry, I'll be sure to tell her how you screamed." The lie hits Mithridates harder than any physical blow. He knows it's a lie. He has to believe it's a lie, but doubt is a poison more deadly than any venom. What if she's not safe? What if his noble gesture has only made things worse for her? Stay strong, he tells himself. She's alive. She's free. This suffering has meaning if she's free. But as the day wears on, as the insects grow bolder and the infection spreads, maintaining hope becomes harder than any battle he's ever fought. The maggots are the worst. He can feel them moving under his skin, hear them feeding, know that they are literally eating him alive from the inside out. By the third day, the line between reality and nightmare begins to blur. Fever has set in, a blessing and a curse. The heat in his brain makes the physical pain seem distant, but it also opens doors to horrors his mind creates to fill the void left by rational thought. He sees Roxana walking across the water toward him, her silk dress flowing behind her like liquid silver. She's speaking, but he can't hear the words over the buzzing of the insects. She reaches out to touch his face, and her fingers come away covered in maggots. "You didn't save me," she says in his fever dream. "You only made it worse." I need to pause here for a moment. I know this is hard to listen to. I know every instinct in your body is telling you to stop, to click away, to find something lighter to occupy your mind. But if you're still here, if you're still listening, then you understand why these stories matter. This isn't entertainment. This is a testament to human endurance, to the depths of cruelty we're capable of, and to the heights of courage we can achieve even in our darkest moments. Hit that subscribe button if you believe these stories need to be told. Ring that notification bell if you're ready to confront the full spectrum of human experience, from our greatest triumphs to our most shameful failures. Because Mithridates' story is far from over. Something changes on the fourth day. Perhaps it's the fever. Perhaps it's genuine enlightenment born from extreme suffering. But Mithridates begins to see his situation differently. The hallucinations become less frequent, replaced by a strange clarity that cuts through the physical agony like a sword through silk. He stops struggling against the bonds, stops trying to shake off the insects. Instead, he begins to observe them with something approaching scientific curiosity. He notices patterns in their behavior, preferences in their feeding habits, hierarchies in their social structure. "You're dying," he tells himself, with remarkable calm, "probably within the week. The question is, how will you spend your last days? In terror and despair? or in contemplation of the mystery of existence. This is when Mithridates begins to recite poetry, first silently, then aloud. The works of Zoroaster, verses about the eternal struggle between light and darkness, good and evil. The insects don't care about poetry, but somehow the rhythm of the words, the structure of the verses, provides an anchor for his dissolving sanity. Ahura Mazda, he whispers to the Persian sky, if you exist, if you truly see all things, then let my suffering serve some purpose. Let it mean something. Let it save her. That evening, as Tissaphernes' camp settles into sleep, Mithridates hears a soft splash in the water nearby. A young soldier, barely 18, with the soft features of nobility, approaches the boat under cover of darkness. I am Darius, the boy whispers, nephew to General Tissaphernes. I know what you did, why you did it. My uncle boasts of his cruelty, but some of us still remember honor. The boy produces a small vial of opium. I cannot free you without signing my own death warrant, but I can ease your passage to whatever lies beyond. Mithridates stares at the vial, seeing in it both salvation and damnation, death with dignity or a shameful surrender, the choice that defines not just his remaining hours, but the very meaning of his existence. Keep it, he says finally. If the pain becomes truly unbearable, if I begin to beg and plead and shame myself, then come to me again, but not yet, not while I can still think clearly. Young Darius nods with something like respect. You are braver than my uncle believes, he says. He wagers you will break by the 7th day. Then let us both hope he loses that wager, Mithridates replies. If the 3rd day was hell, the 5th day is something beyond hell, a realm so far removed from ordinary human experience that language itself becomes inadequate. Gangrene has set in around his wrists and ankles, where the ropes cut off circulation. The smell is overwhelming, attracting carrion feeders, crows, vultures, even wild dogs that pace the shoreline, waiting. But worse than the physical decay is what's happening to his mind. The hallucinations are back, but now they're different, darker. They show him not just Roxana, but every person he's ever loved, ever cared about, and in these fever dreams they all blame him for their suffering. His mother appears, her face twisted with disappointment. I raised you to be sensible, to survive, and for what? For a woman who probably never loved you at all? These mental torments are Tissaphernes' true masterpiece. Physical pain can be endured, but doubt is the cruelest torturer of all. It makes the victim complicit in their own destruction, turns their own mind into an enemy more implacable than any external force. Mithridates begins to question everything. Did Roxana ever really love him, or was she simply using his infatuation for her own protection? Was his heroic gesture actually just male pride masquerading as nobility? Has he thrown his life away for nothing more than his own ego? Stop, he whispers to himself. These thoughts are not yours. They are the fever speaking. They are Tissaphernes' poison working in your mind. But then, through the haze of pain and delirium, he hears something that changes everything. Voices on the shore, speaking in hushed, urgent tones. One of them is familiar. impossibly, incredibly familiar. The boats, tomorrow night, when the guards change. It's Roxana's voice. She's alive. She's free. And unless his fever-addled brain is completely deceiving him, she's planning his rescue. The knowledge that Roxana is alive transforms nothing and everything. The physical agony continues unabated. If anything, it's worse now that circulation has been cut off for so long. His extremities are black with necrosis, and he knows that even if he somehow survives, he'll never be whole again. But his spirit soars even as his body fails. She's alive. She's free. She hasn't forgotten him. The sacrifice meant something after all. All day he watches the shore with new intensity, looking for signs of her presence, her plan. The guards seem restless, distracted. Several times he sees figures moving in the reeds at the water's edge, too far away to identify, but close enough to suggest surveillance, preparation. As evening approaches, young Darius returns. This time he's not alone. 3 other soldiers accompany him, their faces grim but determined. "The woman you saved has saved you," Darius whispers. "She offered herself to my uncle in exchange for your freedom. He accepted, but he lied. He plans to keep both of you, to make your suffering part of her torture." The words hit Mithridates like physical blows. "No," he croaks. "She can't. I won't let—" "You can't stop anything from those boats," one of the other soldiers says bluntly. "But we can. We're going to cut you free and get you to the river. There's a boat waiting. But you have to understand, there's no going back after this. We'll all be branded as traitors." Mithridates closes his eyes, feeling the weight of other lives settling on his shoulders. These young men are willing to sacrifice everything for his freedom, for a principle they believe in. But accepting their help means accepting their destruction. "Why?" he asks. "Why risk everything for a dying man?" Darius's answer is simple. Because if we don't risk everything for what's right, then we're already dead inside. And that's a death worse than anything my uncle can devise. The rescue begins at midnight, when the moon is dark and the camp sleeps deepest. Mithridates can barely stay conscious as they cut his bonds. The sudden return of circulation to his limbs brings agony beyond description, but also the first real hope he's felt in a week. They have to carry him. His legs won't support his weight, and infection has spread through his body like wildfire. But somehow, impossibly, they make it to the river without raising an alarm. The boat is there as promised, along with Roxana and an old fisherman who knows the waterways better than any map. "My love," Roxana whispers, cradling his fever-hot head in her lap as they push off into the current. "I thought I had lost you forever." "You did," he manages to reply. "The man who went into those boats, he died on the 5th day. I don't know who I am now." And he's right. The Mithridates who emerges from the boats is not the same man who entered them. The physical scars will heal, mostly. The psychological ones will last forever. He's seen the absolute depths of human cruelty, felt the earth-shaking terror of complete helplessness, experienced the slow dissolution of everything he thought he knew about himself. But he's also discovered reserves of strength he never knew he possessed. He's learned that love, true love, can inspire courage that transcends death itself. He's witnessed the power of ordinary people to choose good over evil, even when that choice cost them everything. They flee to Greece, where Persian authority cannot reach them. Darius and his companions become merchants, finding honest work far from the intrigues of imperial courts. Roxana and Mithridates marry, though the ceremony is simple. They've both learned to value substance over show. Mithridates never fully recover physically. His hands shake constantly. Phantom pain shoots through his missing fingers, and nightmares wake him screaming most nights. But he adapts. He learns to write with his left hand, to find beauty in small things, to appreciate every moment of freedom as the precious gift it is. "Do you regret it?" Roxana asks him one evening as they watch the sunset from their simple home overlooking the Aegean Sea. "Do you regret the choice that led to such suffering?" Mithridates considers the question seriously, as he considers all questions now. "I regret the pain I caused you and the men who saved me," he says finally. "I regret that my actions forced others to make impossible choices. But the choice itself? No. I cannot regret choosing love over fear, justice over safety, principle over survival." Scaphism wasn't just torture, it was a political tool, designed not just to punish the condemned, but to terrorize anyone who might consider resistance. The Persians perfected this method precisely because it was so visible, so prolonged, so utterly dehumanizing, that it served as a deterrent to entire populations. Modern psychology has studied the effects of extreme torture, and the results are both disturbing and fascinating. Some victims are indeed broken completely, their personalities shattered beyond repair. But others, a surprisingly significant percentage, emerge with what researchers call post-traumatic growth. They become more empathetic, more appreciative of life's simple pleasures, more committed to causes greater than themselves. Mithridates lived to be an old man, despite everything. His account of Scaphism became one of the most detailed descriptions we have of this horrific practice. Historians centuries later would rely on his testimony to understand not just the mechanics of the torture, but its psychological impact and its role in Persian imperial policy. More importantly, his story inspired others. The young soldiers who risked everything to save him founded a network that would eventually help dozens of other political prisoners escape Persian justice. Roxana established schools for women throughout the Greek world, using her own education to ensure that future generations would have the knowledge needed to resist tyranny. The next time you face a choice between what's easy and what's right, remember the boats. Remember that throughout history, ordinary people have endured extraordinary suffering for principles that seemed abstract until they were tested by fire. Remember that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the decision that something else is more important than fear. And remember Mithridates, who discovered that love is indeed stronger than death because it can inspire us to choose meaning over survival, purpose over comfort, truth over the lies that make life easier but leave us smaller than we were meant to be. The boats are waiting for all of us in one form or another. The question isn't whether we'll face them, it's how we'll conduct ourselves when we do. Choose wisely. History is watching.